We don't do only work here in the U.S. We also collaborate and we have a kind of a consortium that we work with multiple partners in the U.S., but we focus on Africa and Asia so too. And the challenges are very different. I mean, we're talking about in Africa, smallholder farmers and really a lot of challenges of connectivity, lack of data and cultural problems, So the socioeconomic barriers are big things on those smallholders.
Something to Chew On is a podcast devoted to the exploration and discussion of global food systems. It's produced by the Office of Research Development at Kansas State University. I'm Maureen Olevnik, Coordinator of Global Food Systems. I'd like to welcome back our hosts, Dr. Jim Stack, Professor of Plant Pathology and Director of the Great Plains Diagnostic Network here at Kansas State University, and Dr. Colleen Lind, Associate Professor of Communication Studies and Director of the Institute for Civic Discourse and Democracy. The agriculture industry has advanced in many positive ways, including increases in productivity and efficiency, but the cost of those advances could be high. Current research in agronomy is seeking ways to manage food production that will feed an ever-increasing population with increased efficiency, productivity, and nutritional value. Today, we would like to welcome Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti, Professor of Agronomy here at Kansas State University, to the podcast. Dr. Ciampitti is working with colleagues both inside and outside of our College of Agriculture and is encouraging students to broaden their view of agronomy due to the increasing need for multidisciplinary approach to solving problems. Dr. Ciampitti takes us through his passion and vision for improving the future of agronomy and food production. All right, today I would like to welcome Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti. Dr. Ciampitti is a professor in the Department of Agronomy here at Kansas State University. And to get us started here today, could you give us a little background on yourself and how you came to enjoy working in agronomy and came to K-State?
Yeah, as I always say, thank you for the opportunity of this podcast and interview. So I always start when I do presentations or in extension settings or even research that I always say that my accent is a little bit south of Florida. So you need to go all the way back to the southern part of the American continent, and then I'm from Argentina. So I grew up there. I have roots on farm from my grandfather and also now from my oldest brother. So we are three. The one youngest, usually what families tend to say, the spoiled one. My oldest brother farms, but as a really good brother from an agronomist, usually he doesn't listen to any of my recommendations, which is always the case, right? With family. He still calls me. We discuss about agronomy and recommendations, but he usually goes in slightly different directions. I started really early thinking about where is my passion today, and then I'm thinking about how can I help people. That's overall theme on my professional career, thinking about the impact that we have, the legacy, what is our current legacy once we are gone from this dimension. So, and I'm always thinking about that, all the time, that I'm not only working on research publications or training young generations, no. I'm almost thinking about what would be, if you have an opportunity to think about the impact that you want to have, and go look back in your professional career, how do you would like to be remembered? And hopefully the things that we're working today, the way that we're training our students and the way that we're thinking on partnerships, we're trying to be quite unselfish on our research program and trying to also help some other people developing their programs and think about opportunities where we take care of each other. We kind of work as type of family. And I think that some of those common values are coming from my family, from being this kind of a mix of South Americans are usually a mix of Europeans, and we're a mix of people from Italy, people from France, people from Spain, and then we have still that kind of a culture in the back of our minds of big tables on Sundays and a lot of food. And sometimes way too many food, too much food. Like very specific, something for you, something for someone else. And so I grew up in a very nice family-oriented environment, thinking all the time about crops, enjoying my summers, going back to grandmother's house and spending there sometimes 2-3 months. So bless my grandmother that is up there looking out for me. She has a lot of patience with us. 3 boys, 3 months sometimes, or 2.5 during the summers. Very, very patient lady and caring, loving. And then when I was reaching out to the end of my high school years, I started thinking about where I would like to go. And then I went to this point of you're really early and need to decide between what degree you want to pursue. And then, in fact, it was very funny. I always tell this story to many of my students and people. I went to this kind of a psychological test that you go, and then my mom was like, okay, let's go and do it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So there were 10 sessions when they start talking with these people, and then at the end of the day, they say, okay, looks like you're good for computer science or agronomy. And I was kind of like, okay, when I started these therapy sessions, I mean, my idea was to learn more about myself, but also to come out with a decision. So, and then I didn't have a really strong decision. So, but it was interesting or nice to learn that I really like the idea of the technology side, but also I was also thinking all the time, I really enjoy being out, and I really enjoy working in really real type of issues, working with farmers. That was always one of the things that I really look up to. And I just went on that direction. I think I say, okay, I don't see myself being in an office. At that moment, I was thinking people in computer science being all the time, every day, 24/7 in an office, fixing hard drives. And I say, no, I don't want to do that. I say, I want to have a balance. I want to go out. I want to solve problems, and I want to think about basically how to go from theory to practice, and trying to think about, okay, we have many big challenges, and we know that we have each one of us small contributions, but I really wanted to focus on that. So that's how I got myself into this degree in Argentina. The degree is not like a Bachelor of Science, so it's called agronomic engineer. So agronomic engineer is like similar to European style of programs. Close to 55, I think, courses. So I did that on University of Buenos Aires. I think that is still ranked number 1 in Latin America as a university, or very close to the top 10. Is public university. So why I'm making this difference is because you are a number. No one knows your name. Professors don't know your name. You are just a number. And it's very challenging if you are not really up to the task. If you don't study, it's really, really challenging because professors, they are being underpaid, and they're excellent researchers, but they're also very tough. So, and the grade scoring on the university is usually 0 to 10. So you could get a 10 being the top of the class, or you could get a 2. Usually they are kind enough not to put a 0. But it was a nice growing environment, and the university is really nice and friendly compared to other universities still being in a big city, because Buenos Aires has close to 10 million people. So if you think about 1/4 of the country, because Argentina has close to 40 million, so 1/4 of the country is in one city only. very unbalanced, and this is what I appreciate from the US, that someone has this vision of trying to balance a little bit more the odds on population and cities. Buenos Aires is quite unbalanced. Most of the excitement and big things are happening in Buenos Aires, and the rest is like, okay, I need to travel to Buenos Aires if I want to get something done. But this university is in a nice located place, has many acres that you can do. You have in the middle of the city, you have a farm, and a small farm, right? And you have animals, and you have a very nice growing environment. I had the chance to work in many multiple disciplines when growing there. I did some of my studies there, and also work, for free, kind of a part-time and soil science. So I learned about soil science. I worked there in a lab for 6 or 7 years. I also did TA. I teach, classes, lab courses on soil science there. And then I start moving towards the end of my career to more crops, and I start going in the direction of more technology, Again, going back to the beginning of my career, going to this idea of crop modeling and thinking about how we can use real data to take decisions, And I emerged into the end of my career, so I finished, I think that was close to 5 years total. And then from there, I moved to a really nice work. I was able to get into a position there that was, after I finished, the International Plant Nutrition Institute. It was first name, called as the Potash and Phosphate Institute, PPI. And the institute was from Canada and the US, but they have offices in many places, India, Brazil, Argentina. And they were looking for an agronomist. The office was the director and the agronomist. So, yeah, a big team. And a secretary. So, a secretary too. So, and that was a blessing. I think that I learned from that. That was kind of my first official job. My boss, the first day I'm going to interview, I go to this place. So it's just a small apartment, entering there to the office, and I'm seeing purple on the walls. And small things purple. And I'm like, purple is not a sign. Just kind of like, the color kind of distract me from the interview. So I finished the interview. Something that I always tell very funny is like I was working with another friend, and I also took to that interview the curriculum of my friend because he was a PhD already candidate. And I say, well, in case if you're not looking for someone only with a BS or a degree, and my boss was, my former boss, he was always telling me, that was one of the things that he's surprising. He was happy to see that, saying, I haven't seen anyone coming to an interview and giving me a curriculum from another person. Funny thing, why I mentioned the purple color of the walls or these figures is because he did his PhD here at K-State.
I thought that might be leading up to this, but I was curious, of course. Yeah. So you still had just your BS at this time, right?
At that time, yes. I only had my BS. I always thought about the idea of going for a master's, but I thought about the idea of saying, before I get too far and too quickly, I think that I need more experience working on a real job and trying to think about how can I reach out to farmers and trying to start thinking about solving problems. The nice thing about this institute is that it's a combination. Industry support the institute, so they provide the funds, right? And the institute was trying to develop the best management practices for fertilizers. So it was a place where it was quite close to working in academia, but what you were trying to do in many situations were helping university professors getting research done, and also helping them to how to communicate your research and how to reach out to farmers. So we're kind of in the middle of the action, in the process, because our extension system in Argentina is very weak. Universities, they focus only on teaching and research. Extension is not part of the mission of the universities. So that is kind of, I will say, the weak link that we have in our country. So we have some institutions like USDA. We call they are the INTA, that is the National Institute of Technology. But it's an organization that today is even a little bit more complex, and it's government-based, and sometimes, it's not really that up to the par in terms of the research and the action. So sometimes we are playing the role of, we have funds from these fertilizer industries and working with university professors, on proposals and giving them, supporting their research, and also helping them to communicate that. That was one of my jobs, was like putting together like a newsletter. So it was I was very excited about that job. And then what excited me the most after I got, I think that was after my first initial year there, is also the type of boss that I have. Which I always say that your manager and the leadership and the vision of the leadership is basically what keeps a person in a place. It's not about, in many situations, of your salary, but it's also about working environment and the type of leadership and vision that you have. And excellent professional. Still kind of, I call him like a friend or a professional dad. And I learned a lot about basically on how to handle, how to think about approaching complex problems, and thinking about solutions more than just staying, or getting attached to the problems only. I'm thinking about all the time. We will have every time that you do any work, you will find problems. The question is not how do you react to the problem, if you react in a good or bad way, but also how do you come up with the solutions? And for me, it's the most important aspect too. So after I started that place, so I was thinking, and I thought very seriously about doing a master's, because we started working with farmers. So we finished doing a master's there, working with farmers on farm research network. And from there, I have the pleasure of, part of my job was having multiple university faculties coming from all over the world, getting them, picking them up at the airport, and taking them to the hotel, to the city, talking to them. And they were all people that they were highly, highly recognized. University faculty everywhere, not only in the US, everywhere in the world. And as soon as I was telling them I'm finishing my master's, because they were asking those questions, they were like, are you looking for a PhD? Kind of immediately, right? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking about that. And at that moment, my first initial years there, I was just thinking, I was not entirely sure. All the efforts that you need to do in order to pursue or, chase a PhD degree. But I have many blessings working on that job. That was one of the opportunities of thinking about a PhD once I wrap up my master's. And then when I came here to pay a visit, I had multiple opportunities of many universities saying, we would like for you to be here or here or here. And everything came from that job. I never took that. That was kind of my personal achievement, but was also that unselfishness of my boss also sharing and seeing my progress, and let me flourish there. So so I decided around, it was the end of 2008, I was deciding then just to apply for a PhD position, and I got an offer to go to Purdue. So I did my PhD there. We moved to the States. I think that was around June 2009 with my wife and with a baby. It was our first old one, was only 3 months old. So yeah, that was a big challenge. Saying bye to all the family with our 3 months old and saying, we don't know where we're going, but we're happy that we're going. Yeah, and everything was just a blessing. From that on, all our at least my professional career, my former boss at Purdue, Tony Vine, cropping systems, excellent advisor, very kind personality, and then very attached to people. So he taught me also a little bit more about this idea of the secret of the team and family oriented. So on how to really think about the idea of mentoring, young generations, and thinking about this idea of how do you work on team. And he was always very approachable, always extremely busy, but his door was always open. And many situations we talk about other things rather than work.
So did you end up coming to K-State directly from Purdue, or was there, okay.
Yeah, the funny thing, if you want to know a little bit more about myself, is like in 2008 when we went to our agronomy meeting, I think I was in Houston. So I was with my former boss, K-Stater, and he's like, okay, you need to think about going to K-State at least for your PhD. And I go with my wife, and we go to the Purple Coat reception. That is very popular reception from K-State at that meeting, and they start talking about the tornado. And my wife is like, no way. So if there was any small possibility, that disappeared probably in a matter of 5 seconds when they start showing pictures. And of course, now that you are here, there is nothing that you can do, and you laugh in some point to say there was not really human casualties, so it was more like a building damage. And the pictures were more kind of showcasing all those pictures more kind of a sense of humor. It's hard for someone that doesn't have any experience about tornadoes. Zero experience, because in Argentina, where we are from, never. The possibility or probability to see a tornado maybe.
No, it's very understandable. When you have zero experience, you're going to base your reaction on media images, right?
Exactly.
Which are all out, which are terrible.
They showed those pictures.
Right.
Well, they usually do it,
thinking?
and I think that they are doing it for the sake of fun, of saying this happens in our North Farm or in our building, and the tornado went this way, and now we are rebuilding. And it was very short, the possibilities of.
But you talked her into coming here, obviously.
Yes, because my former boss was, a strong supporter of K-State, and he, bleeds purple, and then he was like, it could be one of my dreams if you just go to K-State.
Professor, I'm really intrigued by the way that you apply these lessons of collaboration and mentorship amongst your team. But I want to hear more about the science first. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an overview of what's the broader goal or issue that you're attacking in your lab? And then maybe one example of a very recent project that you're working on as a part of that.
Yeah, that's excellent. I will try to put it as simple as possible. I think that I like the idea of saying that we usually mutate all the time. So every year you will find our team and our research kind of taking another evolution. And personally, it's because I like that type of ideas of getting myself out of comfort zone. And once start feeling a little bit comfortable and start getting into something that is a little more challenging. So, and I feel that one of the maybe the biggest challenges that we have today is how we do translate all our research efforts, data collected, into decisions that we can help farmers. So far, I feel that we have done an awesome job on researching and collecting data and showing that data to farmers so that we can help them to take decisions. I feel that in overall, we still haven't done a really good job on quickly transforming this data into decision tools and something that farmers can really use and saying, if I look at this application and select this planting date or these practices, then I can take a decision. So still it's really hard to see how we can go from the plot, from the field, to the real impact. And I feel that we need to find, that's why we work almost every time that we have projects, we work really hard on trying to think about how can we close this gap, right? Because I feel that as a university professors, I feel that you're good on doing research, writing, publishing papers. I feel that in many situations, many can say yes. But the question is, how do you go from there to have a real impact?
So our listeners can understand a little bit better, what kinds of things are you measuring? What kinds of data are you pulling together and putting into these large databases that you're trying to figure out what to do with?
And that's an excellent question, because we don't do only work here in the US. We also collaborate and we have a kind of a consortium that we work with multiple partners in the US, but we focus on Africa and Asia so too. And the challenges are very different. I mean, we're talking about in Africa, smallholder farmers, and really a lot of challenges of connectivity, lack of data, and cultural problems, So the socioeconomic barriers are big things on those smallholders. And if you come here, our challenges are coming from, in many situations when you discuss with farmers, they base many of their recommendations in industry or private agronomist. And they still rely on university, but they always make the comment, seems to go slow. We get something, but usually it's not as relevant as the industry. But I know that at the end of the day, many of them, if not all the people that work with us, they appreciate having our unbiased approach, And we go on collecting data, practices that the farmers are doing every day. So we collect all the information. What are the current practices that they do? When they plant, when they harvest, what inputs they use. We collect data from soils, from weather, from crops. We're trying to understand the entire system, which is not easy. It's quite complex, because when you need to take a decision, the decision is not the same from a farmer that is located here and the other guy that is located 50 miles away. It's a completely different decision, different soils, different precipitation. So your recipe, or the recipe that you want to build, with all the research studies, many times, it fails once you move from here to another place. And those are the problems that we face today with some of our research, that is very focused, site-specific, and once you move it to another place, sometimes we have the issue of this lack of transferability, lack of transfer in that spatial domain. So it's a large challenge, and I feel that the years to come, and also for the young generations, we have a responsibility, because that challenge will be even larger.
Because
we keep collecting data, and the amounts of data that we collect are even larger, because we have larger capabilities, technology available, than we can collect even more. But the issues that we face today is like the interpretability, and how you get quickly to farmers is still not up to the par. I always say that in many situations, it's interesting to see technologies coming out, and still we don't have applications. So usually that science in many situations goes a little bit delayed to the technology. Sometimes you see a new satellite is going out to space every month. And in many situations, we don't have yet the research to say, we can use these spectral bands, this color, for identifying the changes in the greenness of the plant. And from there, help farmers to take a decision on input or fertilizer application. So sometimes it takes us 5 to 10 years in order to get up to speed to that technology.
So I'm understanding you to say that data collection is not the problem. The problem is both interpretation and taking the interpretation to some kind of applicable tool.
Yeah, and I can give you an example, and I feel that many farmers will be related to this. And then yield monitor in combines has been around for at least 20, 30 years. Probably the first yield monitor equipment on combines has been probably 1990s. When I remember, just like if it was yesterday, 2013, first year here at K-State, I started talking to precision ag dealers in many parts of the state. And many of them, being honest, completely honest, they say, from all the farmers that they work with us, maybe less than 5% of them, they know how to use the data. But not only how to use it, how to get it out from the memory card, put it in a computer, and make an interpretation. And we're talking about the higher, the champions of technology, these farmers that they just rocket. I mean, they champion this technology, right? And we're talking about that it's only just less than 5% of those farmers are really up to the task of, okay, I can get this memory card and I can make a map in my computer and make an interpretation, right? Look at what happens in the last, I will say, probably 5 to 10 years. We have a disruption. No, we have a new industry coming to market thinking, oh, we can develop the Netflix of farming. How do you do with that? Okay, we can start uploading all this yield monitor data to a website, to a system, automatic cleaning, no? And then we can then from there give to that farmer's prescription for next year. So we can start giving them information so they can use it next year to just, okay, you upload this information and I can get you a map.
Essentially, you do the data collection, give us the data, we'll interpret it for you. You're suggesting that someone has started this?
I mean, we have many large companies already doing that. I mean,
I see.
Very large companies.
Give me an example of who's doing that.
Bayer, I mean, big, large company. Corteva, another large company. And we have many of them. They immediately realize the need. They see the potential opportunity, like John Deere too. They have, I mean, how many green machines are going across the U.S., right?
Where does the private agronomist fit in with that? I mean, obviously those large companies have many of their own private agronomists. Are they necessarily out in the field? I mean, I think about farming, around here locally, and there are some of those large companies, and I'm sure they have a presence, but there's a lot of mid-size. I think like Central Valley Ag, for example. Do they have those kinds of services as well? Yeah,
I think that there is place for. We work with farmers, and I see farmers working directly with John Deere or Bayer, but I also see many farmers directly working with co-ops. Today, the market is like many of these co-ops, they also get access to these tools. They could just pay subscription to one of these tools, and they can get access the same way that if their own company, the same company. So I feel that the game and the competition is more level today. And I feel that as a farmer, still I trust more my local person rather than just to send the data to someone that I'm not even know where I'm sending that data.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. For a lot of farmers, I assume that if it's someone local that lives in their community or at least lives, within the next 30 miles, they're much more likely to enter in that kind of agreement than send it off to, a face on a computer.
Exactly. And I feel that local connection is what is relevant. I mean, if you think about this local agronomist, the boots on the ground is still extremely important. Many farmers, they take decisions based on having your local agronomist coming to your field and talking to a person. I mean, they still don't like the idea of going through a website or only using a decision tool online. I feel that in many situations, they always like to have that kind of a human connection and making sure that they are kind of a trust relationship with the agronomist is one of the things that has been kept constant for the last decades.
It's an evolving trend, though. I mean, it's not done yet either. So
that's really interesting. Yeah,
some of the controversies involved are some of the companies have reached out to the independent consultants to make them brokers of their product. So now you have a consultant providing recommendations and expertise, but they're actually backed by companies. And so, you're still hoping the local agronomist is independent of that, but it's hard to be fully independent of that. And the other controversy is the fact that these big companies now own all those data. Right. And so you have to hope that there's an altruistic motive behind collecting all these data. And there might very well be, but companies stay in business for very slim reasons, and that's to make enough money to stay in business.
Hence Ignacio's point that the trust of a university does actually come into play here, right?
Yeah, and I feel that it's all about also interpretation, because, I always discuss, even I remember when I work with farmers looking at these maps coming from these companies, at the end of the day, I was making sure that I make my point on saying, don't just look at the map and repeat and do it. Think about, have you ever used these seeding rates? Doesn't seem high to you. So don't just go with the flow.
Use a little bit of
because
common
you are
sense
an
from
expert.
your experience. Yeah, right.
You're an expert. Don't just come up with. I always differentiate ourselves from this deep learning, new big computer scientist. Approaches, because I say we need that. We need being as transdisciplinary as possible. We need to work with them, but we need to have at the end of the day the agronomist giving the interpretation, because sometimes you might just put things on a model or things on an algorithm, and the outcomes could be completely out of the loop. Compared to the region, to apply to one region. So
setting aside these sort of ethical and social implications of this larger model, I'm curious then, where do you and your research and your lab come in? Is it with the agronomists in helping them with that interpretation and communication to the farmer? Or is it even before then on building these tools that are being used by these large companies to sort of crunch the data for them? It sounds like you're working mainly with the agronomists and helping them become better interpreters and communicators to the farmers.
Yeah, which is completely true. But also we start evolving our research team to work also with the industry. Why I'm saying this and why we feel that it's extremely relevant to work with industry, because we know that at the end of the day, the arm of that industry, and you name it, John Deere or Corteva or Bayer, so the arm of this industry is 80-90% reaching to farmers. And our efforts of reaching farmers is great. But knowing that maybe a small piece of science that these companies are basically working on and using and basically working with those farmers was coming from K-State, and having the chance to tell the farmers, I feel that it's from them. It's also they can see that they're very proud of our work on seeing that we tested the technology, we look at the science, and we realize if the science works or not. And so we start working in the last couple of years of, I can give you several examples, but with Corteva, we were looking at testing some new hybrids that they are not even yet in the market. So by the time that they reach out the market, the only few people that have some information are us. And we will know for sure when they are coming out, exactly where these hybrids will work and where those hybrids probably will not just make much difference. And for us, knowing that you are being recognized as a university for your science and helping this industry to really developing the basic science that will basically get back to farmers is also extremely relevant on the side of the research aspect. Similar when we work with, for example, with John Deere, many of the things that they are working today on the digital agronomy, collecting large data sets from multiple farmers across the entire US and helping them to provide an interpretation of that data. And us basically helping to develop the interpretations of these data sets. You know that whenever these data sets or these tools will be out, you know exactly everything, because you have in them behind of knowing, do they work all the time? When do they work? When do they not work? And we feel that we need to kind of demystify a little bit this idea of concept of university and industry don't work well together. I feel that is, has, at least from my opinion, never been there. And I feel that as long as we keep on our business and keep our identities, then we can see more strength on these partnerships. Industry is more focused on business-oriented. They need the product, they need to make the money. We need to focus on being relevant, having the science being done, and make sure that we know basically what are the pros and the cons of many of these technologies. And we know that we will be reaching millions of acres, not just a few thousand acres, millions of acres when that technology is out.
Wow. This is not what I was expecting today. It's pretty big.
But it's also thinking about the concept, and I have been in many conversations of thinking about this, how can we embrace and develop teams that they can move our science forward? Many times If I give you an example of agronomy only, right? You do your research, you put it in a publication, you send it to a journal. Guess what? The reviewers are also agronomists. And you get it published. So you never have a sociologist as a reviewer. You never have an engineer as a reviewer. You never have a human person or human nutrition as a reviewer. So there is a whole disconnection already in our disciplines that we are being evaluating for ourselves on what we do, and we say, yes, this based on what we know is good. But once it's coming out, we have been seeing many failures of translating research into action because there was an proper economic evaluation, because there was not really a clear idea of what was the social cultural barriers of this new technology. And we continue to make progress on science, but many of these progress, if you think about the amount of funding that is going out, are very tiny. I mean, they're not incremental. In 10 years, you say, okay, we have done, yes, the number of publications in the last 10 years has been exponentially grow. The question that everyone is wondering today is like, how many of that publication is really impactful publication, or is just a publication to say, as a part of my research grant, I need to publish a paper, done, check. And I did that. So we need to start rethinking our system, and we need to start rethinking about the way that we communicate our science, the way that we develop our teams, and the way that also we develop our partnerships. There have been many companies already thinking about these strategies on their opportunities in many situations where they don't have business on doing something that is potentially less commercializable, or something that is maybe more focused on Africa. So there are opportunities that they can lease technology to us, and we can help it to take it from this point all the way to the end. And those are situations where you can start finding more partnerships, where the industry is saying, I don't see the value, and then the university is like, no, wait, there is a lot of value. We can help many people if we can take this all the way to the end. We can help people all over the world. So we need to rethink about many of the things or strategies that we have been implementing in the past, and I feel that we are on that. Hopefully, the way that I'm feeling today is that I feel that we are in that kind of a transition on how we are rethinking, reshaping ourselves, on our strategies.
So I agree. So two questions. Yes. One is your students. They need to do their research. Mm-hmm. They need to publish their research in order to help them get that next job. And in fact, when they get that job, they're going to be evaluated on the publications and the grants.
Yes.
And the administration of almost every university says, we want you doing multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. Yes. Yet you're going to be evaluated on the publications and the grants. So how do you prepare your students for that reality, knowing, because I agree with your perspective that the greatest impact is going to be when you engage that larger community that's outside your own expertise. How do you convey that to your students? And then the second question is, how do we convey that to the administration to find new metrics for evaluating people?
Excellent questions. No. I mean, I think about this almost every day. I mean, I have been thinking about this for the last, I would say, probably year. I feel that we need to lose being afraid of writing. I always tell to my students, I'll teach them from the day that they arrive how to write, and I say, these are skills that you will get. They are your skills, and you will get those skills, and they will be for entire life, So I feel that the challenge of publication for us as a team, and not to undermine the process of publishing, but I'm trying to make them feel that the publication is something that easy. We will get this done. We're a team. We'll put a field studies. We will get published. Don't worry about this. I'm trying to get them think that the challenge is not just the publication, that the publication is not your last step, right? When you put a grant and you say, okay, we will be collecting this data and we'll process, analyze, and publish three papers. I'm trying to think okay, what about if we put another section on the grant that we say, we will do a farming networking session, we will do a new ideation, we will do potentially some ideas to start thinking about a certificate or maybe a new course. So rethink your idea that the publication is not your final step of the process of research, but maybe it's just intermediate. That then you should have between your publication and at the end of the project some space so you can make sure that you make your effort, if you have the funds available, to translate this as close as possible to help that farmer. Maybe not perfect, right? Maybe not entirely to say we're not a private company, we don't have 1,000 people yet. But you are thinking about how you can get this research closer to the farmers. So, and we train our students in that mentality. There is no secret there is a lot of work behind many of the students. They understand the way that we work. I'm very proud of saying that the mentoring and it's not coming only on my side, because it will be impossible for me. I will not have enough hours on the day to dedicate to everyone half an hour when I have sometimes 30, 40 people. But I can see the rest of my team embracing that mentality, that culture, and then having the passion. And finding the people is the key aspect from my opinion. When you are putting together your team and we are thinking about doing something large, you need to find the right people to do it first. So unless you find the right people, don't try to just glue people with funding. Because we tend to think on academia many times this situation, no? I go and apply for a grant, I put 10 people, $100 million, good. You finish that grant and that people will just depart. One will go one way, one will go the other way. But when you find a core team with core values, that they share something in common, that people will try to stay together.
Does it impact, so during the course of their degree program, does it influence the courses you?
Yes, a lot. Good, excellent point. I would say many of the students that we have today, I would probably, someone call them students on agronomy. But if you look at their program of study, they have geography, statistics, computer science, because that's what the industry and that's what we need to prepare this young generation for. Integrating concepts. We need people that have the basics and the solid foundation. So I'm not going away from this idea or negotiating you on saying, no, we don't need an agronomist. Wait, no. We need an agronomist. We need that solid foundation. I'm not wanting to give that away or trade you and say, no, let's do less courses. No, let's not relax on that. But we also need to train people that they can think differently. I don't want to have, or I'm not a statistician, but I took several courses. I think that was almost for a master's on statistics when I did my PhD, because I wanted to talk to a statistician and be at the part to say how to explain my problems and make sure that I'm ready to say, how can we find solutions for analysis? And I want my students to have something similar. No, as soon as I want to make sure that they are able to talk to a person in geography. They're not afraid about analyzing spatial data. Sometimes you have in a farmer field, you might find 2,000 yield responses curves. 2,000, not one, 2,000 in a field. Because depending on how many pixels, how many size of data you use, you can find and plot in all the sections that the machine is harvesting individual responses. The question is, will you cry when you look at all that data? And will you be ready to do it? Or will you be ready to say, well, this is challenging, I know, but I have some tools. So we need to prepare people that they are ready to talk to someone, to make sure that you work with experts. That's the idea of the transdisciplinarity. It's like saying, I don't want for you or to be a statistician or a geographist or a computer scientist, but I want to make sure that you feel comfortable going and talking to them. That's the only thing. If you finish your program and you can do that, I feel that immediately we will have 10 companies making a line. companies, universities trying to hire you immediately because you have something that many people doesn't have, which is you already have incorporated this. You don't need to, no one needs to come to you and explain what transdisciplinary means or force you to say, it would be good if you work with industry, or it will be so nice if you can go to the next college and see that there is a college also here beyond agronomy or beyond agriculture. We naturally try to do that. We naturally try to bridge these links, and we are going beyond now. We are trying to have students. I have one example of one of my students that she's doing a master in statistics and a PhD in agronomy, right? Because if you want to take it to another level, you can do it. And that doesn't affect the duration of your program. She might be finishing in a 4-year program with a master's in statistics and a PhD in agronomy. And you start thinking about the possibilities, of training people like that. And I feel that once you have those skills and once you see that as a kind of a routine every day, like you go and talk to a statistician or you go and talk to someone in GIS or you take a course, it's natural for you. And I feel that this is a people also when we talk to any even industry contacts, the first question that they ask many times is like, do you have someone that knows about agronomy and is good in data and remote sensing? And I'm like, okay, are you wanting to have one person, or are you thinking about hiring 4 or 5? No, we're looking for someone that can help us too. But that's what industry is looking for too. That's the type of people that industry is searching for, because they want to have people that they can solve these large problems, that they can just work with agronomists at the local level, help them, but also at the same time make sure that they are thinking ahead, how we can solve the problems. Because the collection of data is not as challenging today as it was 20, 30 years ago. The quality of how you collect the data and the interpretability once you have the data are the challenges that we are planning to have in the coming years, for sure.
How about the last part of that question about the universities? Evaluation of especially young faculty. I think the mature faculty can handle it all, but I worry mostly about the pre-tenure faculty trying to, you almost look at the way we evaluate and say it actually precludes them from doing what we want them to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how we get our administration over the hump of that.
I'm not sure if I have an entire solution to that problem today, but I can tell you that, I can put myself as an example on thinking my mentality evolved from the last 10 years. If I go back and talk to Ignacio the year that he arrived here, he was a guy that was a little bit afraid and thinking that he can do many things, but didn't know how to. And you go first on your initial steps on trying to be solid. And when I'm saying solid means that you play with the system. Okay? I think that you need to think about how to play the game. Make short-term bets. Make sure that you secure that kind of achievement or expectations coming from administration. But try to start playing small bets for long-term. And put seed in many people that you are ready for the task once they need someone to champion that, And I feel that I'm lucky to see, for example, last week we had one of my PhD students graduated from my program, and she immediately started a position. So she's now assistant professor in our department. And I take a lot of pride on that. For me, that is my achievement. That is probably my number one achievement. The youngest graduated PhD student in the class last week and got a job in the same department for a teaching. But I feel that my job there was more making sure that removing the roadblocks and teaching her how to work around the system. And teaching her publication will be always part of your things that you need to report, grants, because even for her prelims, I challenged her to write a grant. Mm-hmm. So we write a grant in collaboration with Kansas Corn. and also teaching her this idea of we need partners. The people, the things that sustain a faculty, a research program is also this people connection. The institutions are always there. K-State, John Deere, Kansas Corn, but at the end of the day, it's about people. It's about these connections that we establish. So if you can establish these connections with Kansas Corn, with John Deere, this is a trust, that you are trying to establish. And this is big part of basically securing grants, thinking about your next steps in doing your tenure process too, right? It's not only just about saying, I need to write papers, I need to be productive and effective on numbers. It's like, think about how you can pave the foundation for yourself in 10 years and your team, no? And think about the impact that you want to have. And I feel that at the end of the day, a real clear impact from our team is these PhD students, master students that are coming out. And we are seeing 10 years, we have 15 students already graduated. 8 PhD students. From many of them, we have 3 or 4 already faculty in the US. Right? And I think that is legacy. That is what I was trying to talk at the beginning about, this idea of the legacy. The legacy is not about what I can do or how many publications I have, but it's looking at this student succeeding and being now a professor. And I know that her impact at K-State will be huge. Wait for that. You will hear a lot about her. And I think that's what kind of motivates you. And then even going back to your point of thinking about administration, I feel that it's fair. The game is in know which ones are your short-term goals and make sure that you invest initially on those to satisfy the administrative rules. But also make sure that you have enough space, critical thinking, and time to start investing on these long-term bets. Okay, we start working with one faculty from BIE, Biological Agricultural Engineer, for the last 6-7 years. And you can see how these type of human connections, relationships, they keep evolving and flourishing. And then those are the things that how you can establish transdisciplinary teams. It's about connections. I believe 100% of the idea of if I want to develop something that is transdisciplinary, I cannot call people and saying, hey, you guys want to be friends? Send me your number. Let's take an email. I say to them, do you really want to get this done? And this is not for you. It's not for me. This is something that is, do you want to build a legacy? And means that we might need to invest many hours of our weeks discussing, interacting, fighting, getting nowhere. 2 hours of nowhere, but you are building those connections. And the human bonds are the things that basically is our future. It still is that human connection and sharing core values is the future of being transdisciplinary, because it's not about just only saying, oh, we complement each other so well. You know so much about machines. I know so much about, unless you click and you have good human relationships and you work each other well and you respect each other and you have clear vision of where both you want to go together, or more than two when you have big teams, things will happen for a couple of years until money's there. Once money's running out, goodbye. And I feel that that's probably one of our secrets of my personal small team, in the sense of saying we always put bets that they were sometimes short-term to secure and make sure that we are fulfilling the administration, number of publications, number of grants, but also we start thinking about, in long-term, taking some level of risk, making bets. When a student was coming and I knew that was the best student, I never hesitate to say, I will hire that person and I will find a way to maintain this person here, because you are investing on talent. And you are investing on finding the key people for your team, no? It's not just about, oh, I have a project, I need to put a name to the project. And sometimes we tend to do that. That I try to change myself, this structure, no, of mentality. We are very reactive. You put a grant, you get the grant, and then now you are like, okay, I need to look for someone. Why don't we start for looking for someone before? So when the grant is coming, the person was ready. You train that person. The person is ready, knows your team, knows the mentality, and it will be the best mentor for even younger people in your team, right? So these are things that I feel that those are the things that are the small secrets, when you start thinking about the secrets. And each one is a team effort. I never take credit of if something is an award on my end, or I always say it's really a team approach. I mean, you have people that are doing things that they are taking responsibilities, when in fact they probably are just there helping only, but you see that they want to take more responsibility. And I feel that passion that is around is a little bit contagious, You see that kind of people seeing this and saying, let's do it.
Wow, I think we could do this for another hour. This has been a great discussion, and I really have enjoyed this. We are a little past our hour this afternoon, so that's.
I'm sorry about that.
No. It's great. It's been really a fun discussion. A lot of good information shared. Before we wrap it up, are there any things that you want to add that we may have forgotten to ask you, or any last minute questions from either?
I have one off-the-wall question. Early when you were explaining the University of Buenos Aires, being in a city of 10 million. So when we talk about food security a lot, we always think about urban centers being detached from food production and agriculture. What's it like in a major city where you have a farm in the middle of the major city? Does that trickle out into the population, or I know this is kind of an off the wall question, but I was just curious.
No, but it's an excellent question. I feel that it's similar to here. You start seeing people, which is very unique. You start seeing people rushing through their lives, and they go through their fields and they don't look around. They just go through and they walk, they pass by. And sometimes we have very few people that they just tend to appreciate. They stop by and they look at, what are you guys doing? Are you guys using fertilizer or not? So I feel that sense of appreciation is still not there. And I always say that the ones to blame, and I would take responsibility, is us. Because I don't feel that we have been the best communicators of our achievements. And I still feel that maybe because of our issues of not being super great on being transdisciplinary, our issues of not working with social scientists and trying to understand why a person is more prompt by a commercial that is talking about GMO rather than a commercial that is coming from a farmer or from us talking about all the benefits on producing food that is sustainable, low price, And I feel that from a marketing standpoint too, we never been good on market our work. And I feel that that's something that I also try to work with my team slowly. So we have I call a communication person that help us with some of our social media. And I value her a lot because I feel that she brings something different. She's not an agronomist. And how to communicate our achievements. And even from a funding perspective, you are providing funds to research. If we can help you to giving you more visibility of your work, of your money, of your support, is relevant. And also trying to show to the entire community that it's not just you plant something and it's on the market. It's not coming magically from a seed all the way to the supermarket. I think that we need to improve the way that we communicate, and I feel that we have a long way to go on that.
I would agree.
Well, thank you again. Thank you all for coming today. It's been great.
Yes, thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or comments you would like to share, check out our website at ksu.edu/research/global food and drop us an email. Our music was adapted from Wayne Gowen's album, Chronicles of Carmela. Special thanks to him for providing that to us. Something to Chew On is produced by the Office of Research Development at Kansas State University.